This will be video number 6. I don't think I've ever done 6 videos before. This will be the last video. So, once we've shipped either our dietary fat out to the body and a chylomicron, or our liver-made fat and cholesterol out to the body, first is the VLDL, but really what we focus on is the LDL. The question is, how does it actually get into cells? So it's not as easy as kind of doing a drive-by and throwing fat in a muscle cell or a fat cell or a neuron and it's taken up. It's all done by handshakes and molecules and things like that. So chylomicrons will do a handshake with, let's say, a fat cell. So this would be fat that you ate, dietary fat. By the way, this could be a muscle cell. And there is an enzyme that sits on the receiving cell, the muscle cell, the fat cell, the liver cell. It's called lipoprotein lipase. So it's a lipoprotein lipase. And it cleaves the fat in the chylomicron. Chylomicron is a lipoprotein. HDL, VLDL, LDL, those are lipoproteins. That's the class of the structure that they are. So LPL sits on the receiving cell and cleaves away. It doesn't cut away the triglyceride. It cuts up the triglycerides into fatty acids, and what your cells accept are fatty acids. They kind of cross the gap, if you will, from the capillary into the cell. And then what your cell does is it makes a new glycerol, a new cap, and you just kind of stick on the 3 fatty acids that were from food, chylomicron, or from your liver in the LDL. So LPL brings fat into the cell. If you want to release fat, which is many of us do, that's called HSL. That's hormone-sensitive lipase. That sits in a fat cell or a muscle cell. And by definition, it's supposed to be on. You should be nibbling away at your triglycerides and releasing fatty acids, little chains of carbon, 16, 18 carbons long, into the bloodstream. Now, normally those aren't water soluble, but those fatty chains actually can connect with protein and kind of surf their way through the blood, if you will. And by definition, you want to be doing this. You want to be, using your body fat for fuel. But it is a hormone-sensitive lipase. So this enzyme can be turned up or turned down. When we eat carbohydrate-rich foods, we will raise insulin, right? Insulin tells cells, take up glucose. Well, if you're taking up glucose, aren't you kind of like storing stuff? You don't really want to be releasing stuff. And that's exactly how insulin affects fat cells. Insulin actually turns off this enzyme or turns it down. So after a meal on which you had a lot of carbohydrates, you really aren't burning any body fat because you can't release the body fat because insulin has turned down the enzyme that would do the releasing. So that's after a meal. Then when insulin levels drop, HSL will turn back on, and once again, you're sipping on your body fat for fuel, and little fatty acids are going into the bloodstream, catching a ride, surfing all the way to the muscle tissue, and being sucked up like spaghetti and burned. During exercise, HSL can be jacked up higher. Epinephrine. Remember epinephrine? It tells your liver to release more glucose. It also tells your body fat to release more fat. So HSL can be turned off after a meal if you raise insulin, or turned up during exercise. This gets back to John's old adage, why are you eating late at night? Because if you're eating something carbohydrate rich before you go to bed, you are raising your insulin levels, you are turning down HSL, and then by definition, you're not really burning body fat while you sleep when you should be, because you can't. You can't burn fat if you don't release fat. And I think folks who do these time-restricted diets where they eat from 1 p.m. to 6, they eat whatever they want, but they eat from like 1 p.m. to 7 p.m., and they feel like they lose a little weight and they have better control over their weight. I think what they're doing is they are using their HSL better. They're burning their body fat when they should while they're sleeping. And many of us who snack late at night, myself included, we are not. Okay. Recommendations for fat. Generally, it's 20 to 35% of total calories. Limit your saturated to less than 10% of all your cholesterol fat for the day. If you can get your saturated down to 5 or 7%, that's probably healthier. Trans fats from partially hydrogenated foods, ramen. We should limit that to 0 if we can. And then these are very simple. Any fat you see that's solid, cut it away. If you can get rid of meat and go with nut butters, so for example, today I had a peanut butter and homemade apricot jam sandwich versus having, let's say, deli meat. I would say this though, if you're going to try to add more plant fats, if you can add those in the olives or just using room temperature olive oil as a dressing, that's always better than adding oils and then heating those oils. Remember, oils are unsaturated fatty sources. Heat breaks fat. And when you cook up oil to high temperature, you kind of break it down and it becomes really less healthy. So adding walnuts, adding fatty fish that you don't overcook to oblivion, adding chia seeds, adding hemp if you want to, using olive oil at room temperature. That's kind of the better way to go than just kind of like, I'm going to do shots of cooked shots of heated corn oil every night. That is not the way to go. I think you all know this. I don't need to be telling you that you shouldn't be eating bacon fat and you probably should be eating more walnuts. I don't need to tell you this. You know this. But for some of you, bacon fat is very delectable. It freaks me out, but I know some people love it. Take care. This is the final video, and I got a lot of fixing to do on my captioning. Take care.